Hey guys, it's Wags with Ironman 4x4 America. This install video is addressing how to install our 1218 airbag delete kit in your truck. Look, this install is so easy. You've already figured out how to push the play button on a YouTube video. You're basically halfway there. Obviously, you come from a house of learned doctors. So yeah, hang with me. It's gonna be easy. Let's dig into this. All right, so let's check out what Santa brung us. First of all, this is what it's gonna look like. Grab yourself a knife or some scissors or something to get this banding off. Cut the tape here. Look at that. All right. Look at that beautiful bean footage. So what comes in the kit? Well, let's get it all unwrapped and laid out. So everything's pulled out of the box, but you might be asking yourself, why do I even need an airbag delete kit? Well, look, a lot of Toyota vehicles and Lexus vehicles, your GX460s, 470s, and some of the 4Runners came with an airbag or an AHC air ride system in the back. So if you want to upgrade your suspension to an aftermarket shock and coil, you got to get rid of those nasty airbags in the back. Another great thing that some folks don't realize is if you want to go replace the OEM airbags that blew out on your truck and go buy, the OEM branded ones, they're incredibly expensive. I'm talking $500 just to put what you had back in. So why don't you save a ton of money, get hooked up with one of these airbag delete kits. Now you can actually upgrade the performance of your suspension. It's such a better option, so much more value and better performance too. So let's talk about what we've laid out. You get a driver and a passenger side threaded mount. These are steel, they're EDP coated, so 100% coated. You're not gonna get any corrosion or rust on these guys. These thread into your threaded spring seats, and that's what makes this kit so awesome, is that it's adjustable. These spring seats are aluminum, they're drop forged, super strong, thread right in, they're powder coated. They also come with a grub screw or a set screw, so once you get your positioning correct, you can lock it down. Just another added layer of protection to keep it from moving on you. It comes with the appropriate hardware for your vehicle. The long bolts are for a GX470 and the short bolts are for a GX460. The nuts and flat washers work with both sets of hardware, so whatever you don't need, just set it aside. Last but not least, you've got your secondary bump stops. I think what the OEM calls these are secondary spring subassemblies, but it's just a secondary bump stop that fits down through the top of your coil. It also works as a coil isolator to help hold your coil in place when you push it up into the upper spring seat. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, well, what's so special about this airbag delete kit that Ironman 4x4 makes? Well, I'll tell you. Normally, the solution is you just get a smooth steel puck, and that puck just bolts to the top of your rear axle where you ripped your OEM airbags out of. So that sits there, and then you have a spring seat that just slides over the top, but also just sits on the bottom of your axle. Well, that's static. It just sits there on your driver's side and your passenger side. It's the same. You can't adjust it out if you have the notorious Toyota left-hand lean, which, Toyota put most of its gas tanks on the left-hand side, and here in America, you drive on the left-hand side. So that's why most of your Toyota, Prado-based vehicles especially have about a 1/2 inch of that left-hand driver's side lean. So what's cool about this is you take the threaded body, you bolt the thing on, and then you actually spin your lower spring seat up to the position that you want. So you can dial it in like infinitely. If you have just a little bit too much left-hand lean or not enough, you can just keep spinning this thing and setting it up so that it's perfect. Look, Ironman 4x4, we give you that option with our front coilovers because they're adjustable, but now you finally have a solution for the back end of your truck. You can get that truck sitting perfectly flat. All right. Hey, one quick reminder, I always forget myself. Make sure before you start any suspension or suspension component install that you get your truck on as flat a surface as you can find and measure all four corners. I, just as general rule of thumb, always measure from the center of the hub directly up to the top of the fender. You're not going to know how to get where you're going if you didn't know where you started. So just take a second, do that. I got the truck jacked up, it's on jack stands, wheels are off, and we're ready to dig in. Hey, most of us like to have our cell phone laid out watching the install video step by step as we go, but your phone gets greasy and you drop it, or you drop a wrench on it and you smash your screen. So do yourself a favor, go to Ironman 4x4 America.com, find the 1218 80K, click on the install section, there's a PDF there, download it, print it out. Now you've got really good written instructions. It kind of gives you a nice overview too. I like to prepare for installs, so sometimes I'll print the instructions out a day or a week before and really read through it so I've got a good understanding of what the project's going to look like. You want to familiarize yourself with what you're actually going to be removing from your truck. This looks a little funky from a normal, suspension uninstall and a reinstall, but don't let it freak you out. It's really, really simple. This is just a cable for an electronic position sensor for your shock. We'll unhook the connector here and just leave the frame side tied. That's going to be fine. This is the dust boot for your airbag. We're going to be getting in there and ripping that dust boot out of there. So you can unhook your sway bar from the frame side, but this is kind of a pain in the butt to get back together. So maybe a little easier way is just to pull your sway bar off here at the axle. All right, and grab a 12mm wrench for the top bolt on the driver's side because you got the gas tank in the way. You can thank E-Honda for that one. Oh, wait a minute, this thing's a Toyota. What am I talking about? You've also got your e-brake cable bracket here. This is a 12mm bolt. I always take it out just so when we droop the rear axle to put the coils in, you don't over pull on that guy. And don't forget to do the driver's side too. All right, now we got to unhook this little turn nugget here. So to get this connector out, see that square right there? Push down and just pull. Pops right out like that. And if I forgot to tell you, make sure you've got your rear axle supported, even with the truck on jack stands. You don't want your suspension to droop out yet until we get some other junk unhooked. All right, grab a 17mm socket. We're going to unhook our bottom shock bolt. Just that easy. And you also go grab yourself some anti-seize because we'll brush a little on there when we go to put it back in. All right, grab yourself a pry bar. And you want to pry between the axle mount and the back of that shock from the back and just pry that dirty son of a buck right off it. Wow, that's probably one of the easier shocks I have ever popped off. Gonna be a good day. All right, to get the top side of the shock out, you're gonna need two tools. A 17mm ratcheting wrench or a gear wrench, because the threaded shaft up here, got to get that top nut up and off of it. You can either grab it by the flats, or Toyota, it's like all one piece. You can use Chanel locks. Lock them down like this. Remember my little trick about which way the mouth is facing is the way it's going to turn. Grip it and rip it, because this is going to take a while. That's why you need a ratcheting wrench, because see, you don't have a whole lot of room to work with. If this starts to get tight here, you can always grab a pry bar and defy the metal. You can bend it up out of the way. Once you get it off, you can always bend it back down. It'll be our little secret. A goose. This bushing has a washer with a retaining like stop lock pin. So grab a pry bar and bend it down out of the way. There we go. Well, there's your problem. And then we can pry the top of this piece of unforsaken nonsense out of here. Just like I planned it. All right, and we want to do the same thing on our driver's side. Sway bar's off, shocks are out. Let's lower down the rear axle. Nice and easy. Not like my brother-in-law's Craftsman jack that literally, you turn it 1/32, thing just boom, falls down. That's why I call it Craftsman. There you go. So there's air lines that we have to access on top of the airbags and pop those off. So give yourself as much clearance as possible. I'm going to lower down the spare tire for now. Get it out of the way. All right, where are we at? We are underneath the rear driver's side of the vehicle near the rear quarter panel. I just wanted to show you something real quick. Your air compressor is under here, under this little plastic panel. You can leave it all hooked up. Just a nice reference. You've got an output air line that comes up over the top of your frame rail, tracks on the inside, goes in here. This is your air tank. You've got a pressure switch on here, all that junk you do not need to worry about. What will help you locate the air line, this output air line here is your rear driver's side airbag. This line is your rear passenger side. You can follow that across the cross member into the top. Trying to mess with these air fittings on the top of each of the airbag, you have no room to work. You have to do it blind. It's really, really tough. A little bit of an easier way is just to unhook it down here at the tank. This whole system is going to be open anyways, so you pull those tabs back, slide it down, take a pick, get it in behind here, push that nylon barb out of the hole like that. Get the other one on the other side to kind of rock out. There you go. You can dust stuff off with it. Cool, that's out. Now you can feel the airline up here and just feed it through and out. That is way easier. For the passenger side, we've already unhooked it there, and then it's just a matter of unclipping it from the retainers on the cross member. Again, this system is useless now because we decided to upgrade to our Ironman stuff. All right, remember that plastic retainer with the two prongs or the tabs? Grab them, pull it down the line, and then on the passenger side, you've got this like brass retaining clip. It's towards the front. You'll feel the shoulder of it. Just slide it back. Yep, got it. This is that retainer clip in the shoulder. It faces forward, so you just get in there and pop it off. And now we should be able to just lower the whole thing right out and feed the line through. Yes, that is a lot easier and a heck of a lot faster than trying to screw with it on the top. See what I was talking about? Getting that fitting out where you don't have any clearance and can't see anything is really, really tough. And this retainer plugs in there, and that's what keeps it up in there. So you just slide that off, the whole thing drops out. Depending on the size of the coils, you might need to unhook your panhard bar to get your axle to give you that extra amount of droop. So you can unhook it with a 19mm socket, 19mm wrench. And if you just kind of support it, you should be able to wiggle that bolt out. Yep. It drops out nice and easy. All right, we're going to let the axle drop with the panhard removed. Just watch your brake lines because it's not the end of the world if the axle hangs and they get a little tight. They're not going to stay tight like that for too long. All right, and then we're going to get the jack under the driver's side shock mount, and we'll jack it right back up, and we'll get the passenger side to drop all the way down because we're going to need all the room we can get. There you go. So to get this whole assembly into your truck, take your naughty cone, take your coil. The coil goes on top of the naughty cone. Take your adjustable spring perch. We have this one set for 1 inch of thread. The driver's side we set to a 1/2 inch of thread because of the left hand lean. We're going to set all this stuff up so that it is upside down. See how that fits in there at the pigtail? Now we can flip everything right side up. I think, if I can do it. Right side up. And because I'm in such a super awesome, comfortable position, I am going to maneuver this into, put the top in first and slide the bottom right onto the axle. And once you have it balanced in there, now we can get the hardware installed. All right, so you're gonna have to hold the washer and the nut nice and flat. Go through the front side, you can watch through the back, and I just lay the face of the nut down up against the radius of your axle, and then very carefully slide it forward, and I use my finger on the other side to kind of keep it together. Now take your threaded bolt and we will drop that down, and then you can use that to kind of sandwich it all together. So take your time, go really slow. There you go, look at that. So it's not impossible, you can do it. Again, it's just, you're trying to take an OEM system and modify it to accept performance suspension. So it's not like they intended for you to have totally awesome suspension on this truck, but we're gonna do it. Awesome. You just catch a few threads. Now we can grab a 19mm wrench, feed it through the front. Now grab an 8mm Allen key, and if you have a flex head on your ratchet, that sure helps a lot. I'm going to come around here, drop that bad boy in. And what you're checking for is you want to try to get this mount centered up on that perch the best you can. So as you tighten it down, it'll start to flatten out. Now it's a nylock nut and a flat washer. There's no spring washer in there. And you don't need to go crazy, but you definitely want to get the thing tightened down. All right. We'll get this guy wiggled out. Sweet. And we're there. Let's go do the driver's side. All right, so we got everything tucked in nice and tight. Make sure to check your upper spring perches because there's kind of a countersunk area that's round. You'll see it, it makes sense, but when you lift the rear axle back up, you want to make sure that either yourself or a buddy kind of helps position those, guide them into place. You need to lift the axle back up. It makes getting your panhard bar much easier to get back into place. So now we've got ours in, we just need to bolt it down. All right, shocks are in. Make sure, don't tighten up that bottom shock bolt until the truck is back on the ground. We don't want to twist those bushings prematurely and have them blow out on us. The only thing left to do is to tighten up our e-brake line, get the bracket back on there with a 12 mil, and button up the sway bar. Now you and me are going to rip some guts out of the front of the truck. It's a pretty much standard suspension, uninstall and install. The only kind of hitch they throw at us is we've got a wire harness we have to unplug on the top of the spring perch, and then they bolted on that sensor to the strut top nut. So we'll work on it together. It's the same sort of wire harness that you had on the back. I always find it easier just to grab like a body clip removal tool, and we'll pop it up out of the bracket. Find something, push down hard on that square, and it should pop right out. All right, now with the wire harness unhooked, you just got to grab on the back of this bracket. You should be able to swing that bad boy around. All right, get it pointing out towards the wheel well. And now we're going to attack that little 7mm nut. It's a little loose there already. Get that guy out of the way. We can bend it back Crumb! We'll get this guy on the right side. Pop that off. Ta-da! We got one more clip to pop out to get the wire harness completely separated. You can use pliers on the back side to clamp the teeth together, but it pops out with the clip removal tool just fine. Okay, now I'm gonna swing it back this way, and we've got a really, I'm gonna bend that down too. I don't know if you can see that in here, but we've got a really tight, kind of low profile 17 mil nut. So we'll pull that off. So the best way to get that little 17 mil nut off is use a 3/8 ratchet with a stubby socket if you have it. It's, again, 17 mil. There we go. Spin that off. The bracket comes up and off. Get that bracket out of my face. Now that we've got all the wire harnesses and the sensors pulled out, it's just a standard suspension uninstall and then reinstall of our Ironman 4x4 suspension upgrade. Whether you're doing Foam Cell Pro or Nitro Gas, it's real straightforward. We've got other videos you can check out to have step-by-step instructions on how to remove and install the new stuff. The really only other thing we need to do, and then we're home free, is we got to get into the fuse boxes, pull a couple fuses for this system, that way it won't throw dash codes at us. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. All right, pop your hood. We got to get to the fuse boxes. They're underneath this panel. You got a couple clips and two 10 mil bolts. We'll get this all ripped out of here. Rip it out by the root. All right. Fuse box. All right, you got your main fuse box. You got two hinge points on the front, and you got this guy in the back. Just push in, it'll deflect. It'll deflect all of your harassment. Whole thing pops off. And then you've got this super sweet little diagram. Tells you what goes where and what does what. All right, if you're dumb like me, every time you pop your fuse cover off, you're like, okay, well, this is a map of all my fuses, but you kind of want to get your bearings because if you could be holding this thing upside down. Sometimes it's just hard to understand what you're actually looking at. So what I do is I find a row of fuses. So I've got a 7.5, a blank, a 15, 15, and a 10. Well, right here, 7.5, blank, 15, 15, 10. So now I know how the fuses are actually laid out according to the map and physically. This will help just keep you from pulling something you don't want to pull. Or if you're trying to do some testing, at least you know which ones, where they're at, how to go find them, how to do stuff. That's what this is all about, doing stuff. We want to pull the AirSus 50 amp at the top, that one right there. Check your instructions. We've got it highlighted in green. We even have a green arrow pointing it out. The next fuse you're going to pull is this 10 amp AirSus number 2 located right there. That's just a small blade fuse. All right, I'm going to grab our handy dandy included fuse puller. If you didn't know, most Toyotas, actually most vehicles, fuse boxes, they keep these little fuse pullers in there. It's kind of cool in case you don't want to use pliers and jack up your fuse while you're trying to yank the thing out. So I'm not trying to beat a horse to death on this, but I like to always confirm, just to help kind of walk me into the right fuse. We've got a 7.5 amp heater fuse, a 30 amp defog, and then the 10 amp Airbus number 2 that we're going to pull. So I know that's going to be right there. So I walk down here and sure enough, 7.5, 30, and 10 right there. So I'm going to hook that guy right over the top. And it really is kind of cool because it just pulls it right out like that. There you go. Now we're going to pull our AirSus 50. It's 1, 2, 3 over from the top left. So we've got a spare fuse, which we do right down here, spare 10 amp. We've got our 50 heater and our AirSus guy right there. So I will grab some pliers because these things are a pain. Ugh. Cool beans. And they are out. I like to tape my spares. I'll just tape them together with painter's tape, write a little note on there, says what they are in case I ever want to put this back to stock. Then you've got your fuses ready to go. So don't forget, what we've shown you here is for the GX470 and the 4th Gen 4Runner. But if you've got a GX460, follow your instructions. The fuse box looks a little bit different and there's different fuses to pull. But honestly, the better trick is just unhook the power at the compressor. Then your truck won't throw any codes, you don't have to pull any fuses, and it's quicker.
It's science.
Well, hey, last step, we've got to locate your internal under-dash fuse panel. To do that, just to provide some context, start by locating your steering wheel, and right here is your fuse panel. If you can't do that, you are probably not a 25-year mechanic. Neither am I. This is literally my second rodeo. Pop this off, flip it around. Now I'm upside down, but we want to pull that Tim's 20 amp fuse. I hope I'm pointing to the right one. If you look in your fuse box, from the top right, you've got 1, 2, 3. And there it is, 20 amp fuse. Where's it at? There we go. Take your fuse puller, hook it on there.
That's the sound of horse.
All right, let's pop this cover back over our panel. I'm gonna put this fuse in with my other one so I don't lose them. And that concludes the install video, which we all know means the start of my nap time. So please get out of my face.